Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Chandra Gore of Chandra Gore Consulting. Chandra, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is a great, catch up situation here.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing, so many phenomenal things. Always good to kind of catch up with people doing phenomenal things in different fields and different opportunities. And just to introduce Chandra to you so you can learn a little bit more about some of that awesomeness that she's doing. Chandra has built successful and profitable businesses through her boutique consulting and public relations firm, Chandra Gore Consulting, working with entrepreneurs to help them create foundations to ensure longevity and growth, quietly making strides with placements for small businesses, entertainment, authors, therapists, motivational speaking clients on local and national outlets. She has been leaving her mark as a publicist in the industry. She is an author, speaker, podcast host, festival founder, and producer. Chandra, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am ready to speak to everyone.
Awesome. Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to hear a little bit more on how you guys started. Could you take us through what I call your CEO story? We'll let you get started with all the awesomeness you're doing.
I actually started out at 18 with a baking catering company a long time ago. A legit business. But I had businesses before that when I was a kid, but that's how it all started.
The paperwork didn't go through.
No, it didn't. My dad was like, you gonna work for me, that's it. So but yeah, my CEO journey started at a young age from my passion for baking, and I found out that was a great business. People like sweets. So started from there. Then I started catering little small events, and then I went into wedding planning for a little bit. That was not my ministry. But in the process of running that, I actually learned a lot about business registrations, how, the different levels of from federal to state to actual local registrations for businesses. So a lot of people don't realize there's a 3-tier process. So from there, I ended up reading about every single county because it fascinated me how many different hoops people had to go through. So when everyone was starting their businesses, they knew that I had done the research. So they came to me and asked me questions. Mm-hmm. So that's where I got my feet in with consulting. And I was like, oh, okay. That was my new little, thing. And then from there, it just blossomed. I was laid off in 2015, which actually prompted me to get my LLC, get my business started and go for it. And then 6 days later, I got another job. So, so being a parallel entrepreneur, it just kind of pushed me to look at the different ways a larger company, works and apply those to my small business. And it actually worked out for me because there's certain things that apply to small businesses that wouldn't work with a larger business. But learning all of that actually helped me to gain clients and explain to them why they can't. I want to be big as Nike. I had to tell them the truth. Like, no.
Right.
So it's like it became it was a great progression of learning how the markets work and stuff. So that's where I just grew as a consultant. And then public relations is something I got in by accident because someone wrote a press release, I didn't like it. And I used to do persuasive writing. So I was like, oh, okay, it's basically we have to sell this to an outlet for them to book a client. Oh, that's easy. Let me write words that'll trigger you to say, oh, I need to find out more. So that's where public relations was added, and knowing how to strategically tell a message, like especially with community events and stuff like that, to let the community know this is what's going on and why they should be a part of it. So that's where that went with my business consulting and public relations. The producer side, I love comedy. That's one of my loves. So I started producing comedy shows, and from there it just took off because it's just like it's the same thing as running a business, teaching comedians that they are a business. So I, kind of everything crosses, paths. So from there, I hosted a festival in 2019. There was no comedy festival ran in Northern Virginia. So I ended up launching that. I was a one-woman show. I brought in other producers. They ran different comedy houses across the Northern Virginia area. Pulled that together, a 5-day event. It was great. So it's like, and then with my community organization, with the voting registration and stuff, it's I wear many hats. So as a CEO, like it's like you can't be pigeonholed to one role sometimes. So it's like everything kind of crisscrosses, and but it all works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you breaking that down, because I think so many times that we see, like, maybe the event, you went to the festival and you saw there was a really phenomenal festival. We don't see all the things that add up to the festival. We don't see, the baking business and the information you learn from that and how you're
Mm-hmm.
using that today and the consulting with the different businesses. And I think so many times, I think, Michael Gladwell has his 10,000 hours theory, where to be an expert at something, it takes 10,000 hours. But so many times we don't see each of those steps that people take in order to get there. We just see the finish line and say, oh, okay, that's all you have to do. When in reality, there's a lot of work that's behind the scenes to get there.
Lack of sleep.
Yes.
I, I miss sleep sometimes. Like I really would like to catch up on the sleep that I missed a long time ago. Like,
Yeah.
but I love to read. So sometimes I get wrapped up in reading different methodologies and, different processes. It actually helps me to keep my mind going, and it keeps me kind of on my toes,
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely. Well, I think too that, and I don't know if you would definitely agree with me, I feel like there's a certain kind of curiosity that I think the best CEOs or entrepreneurs or business owners have. And a lot of them are avid readers. They're, subscribing to every YouTube channel, listening to podcasts. They're taking in so much content to be able to think creatively, sometimes by, as you kind of touched on, bringing what is in one industry to another industry. Sometimes that's the most creative thing that you can sometimes do.
yeah, because it's like, for some odd reason, like in my head, no one can see inside my head, but it's like, you know how an electricity is going through different points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just flows because it knows where to go. So a lot of times I could sit and I'm thinking about something, and then it just click, and it's like, wow, like, wait a minute, I never thought about it that way. And so I end up having to write down like little reminders, like, remember to go back to this and understand, like, this can work with that. And I never thought, it just flows sometimes, because you don't see the parallels in different businesses, which is sometimes it's the same train, and it's different trains, but they all run the same track sometimes, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, so yeah, it's like, because I never thought of applying how I ran my dessert, when I had took orders for desserts and stuff. So I would only release certain things at certain times of the year. Same way with comedy. There are certain times of the year where more people came out to show. So I applied that same thing to that. I was like, wait a minute, more people come out during the summer and the fall, and then not much in the winter because people are staying home. So it's like, oh, okay, so I'll reduce the number of shows I'll have in the winter, increase the number of shows I have in the summer, spring, summer, and early fall. And it was successful. And it was like, oh, okay. And I found that sweet spot right before summer ended and fall began, to to put the festival in. It was like the perfect week. And I was like, that's it was
That's
like,
the
wow, it actually worked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's from the baking business. It is so funny. I definitely understand exactly what you mean. I feel like you're in my head, because I don't know if you ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, where he's
Mm-hmm.
like writing on all the mirror. That's how, and I literally am looking at my mirror right now, because I have a bunch of writing all over. Because sometimes when you get those ideas and things start to flow together, and you see kind of like the forest for the trees, it
Mm-hmm.
really provides you that opportunity, which is, what I love, you're doing the consulting business, because I think you are able to kind of give and provide so many services from that expertise to people to help them, set up their business, as you mentioned. But it also sounds like that the PR is a big part of that. Could you talk a little bit more about those ways that you're able
So,
to do that?
public relations, most of the time people come to me, the first thing say, I want to get on the news. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's your business foundation? What does your SOP look like? How are you going to handle the influx once people put eyes on you? And I get the blank stare, like, what you mean? I just wanted to know what I'm doing. No, you want to sell your product or service, but how are you going to handle once you get that notoriety? I didn't think of that exactly, because everybody wants to be seen for the great things that they're doing, but if you can't handle, your business is not structured to handle going from four orders a week to 400 orders a week, then it's going to fail. So that press you got is going to turn into bad press, and then it's going to turn into cleanup, and then it's going to turn into crisis management. So to alleviate it going to that progression, I sit down and I ask that question. Once you get this media recognition, let's look at your business to make sure that you run the testing so that you can actually handle the influx and handle the looks and handle everything. Let's look at your media presence. Let's look at what you've done online, personally and business, to make sure when those eyes are on you, you are a perfect box that people can it's palatable, and not offensive or a misunderstanding, or I didn't mean to say that. Let's make sure you're ready for that kind of scrutiny, because some people aren't. They'll find an old tweet from 2010 and hit your business closed. Like, that's where it's like, you have to understand it's, public relations is not just the, I'm here, let me show you what I have. Most of the time, that's what all a publicist will do. The duality that I have as a consultant is I will not take on a client that I can't, that I don't vet and look at everything, because they could have done something 20 years ago and I will never be able to get them press, because of what they've done. So I have to vet everything, as a process. So because it's public relations, and especially if you have I always gauge the community as well. Like, hey, have you heard of such and such? What are your views? I check every site that can get a review of a company. If they're a service provider or a public, they work directly with the community, I check all of that, because the issue is, it's like, if you don't fix that one deficit that you had, what's the point of getting the press?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It ends up becoming kind of like a house of cards. So that's why I love that you're able to make sure that you have that foundation. As you mentioned, you don't have that tweet from 2015 or 2000. No, probably not 2000. There probably was no Twitter then, but you get what I'm saying. But at the same
there's
time,
Yahoo reviews back then, though.
Exactly. And especially in this day and age, at the kind of the speak of a smart speaker or the type of a phone, you can really find out so much information and do that due diligence. And it's so important that not only that you might have created this really phenomenal product or service, but that you have that foundation and you have and are showing and being consistent with the brand and the publicity that you could potentially get. So I love that you're able to kind of merge and bring together that duality so that businesses can be successful and take and go from there. Would you consider to be kind of what I call your secret sauce, the thing you feel kind of sets you apart, is that ability to bring in those two different things, but also the experience that you had as well too?
Yes, that is the one thing that I think sets me apart, because I don't just look at, oh, I have a retainer for $5,000 a month and I'm just going to start pitching. To me, that's not doing that person a service. And I will not take on a client that I know is not ready. My conscience and my integrity means more than a check, So it's like, I would rather, if they are not ready, help them to get ready and put that money towards investing into getting their business ready. And then we'll talk about public relations, because some people's businesses are a mess. Like, some people, oh, I got an EIN. Oh, okay, that's cute. Where's your registration? Like, where's your trademarks? What are you doing to protect yourself? Do you have insurance? Have you, do you have the proper licensing to go put these TVs up on the wall in somebody's house? Like, all of these things come into play. Like, and a lot of people are like, but I'm popping on Instagram. That's cute. Instagram can be deleted. It's all of these things that they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Having your structure correct, and just in case something happens, you'll lose it all. And so it's like being honest. And I think in a consultation, I'm brutally honest.
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly what businesses need, because I think so many times, again, you have this idea, and you create this product or service and you think it's the, best thing since sliced bread. But the market sometimes can really beat you up,
Yeah.
especially if you have invested or put a lot of money into sometimes these ideas where it hasn't been vetted. You haven't had that opportunity to know if it's viable. You don't know if you really have your brand and your personal, I guess presence as well too, in alignment with that, where it can become a house of cards, like I mentioned before, if you don't have those things in place. So it's great that you don't just say, hey, I'm going to take care of the publicity part, but say, are you really, and do you really have that strong foundation, so that not only can you get the publicity, but you can also grow from there.
Right. And there's a lot of, and people don't realize, like, because I got feedback one time, oh, you're mean. No, I'm telling you the stuff that nobody else will tell you.
Yeah.
Like, you may be a phenomenal coach. You may have the best lip gloss out here. But if you have back orders now and the people are waiting 3 months, can you imagine once you're on a platform where where people are waiting a year? Like, that actually like, look at I run the analysis and I tell people, like, take this problem and this is what happens, if you multiply that.
Yeah.
And once you tell them that, it's like, I don't want to hear that. Well, then you're not ready.
Yeah.
I have at least, somebody, I want to be a motivational speaker. You only have a 3-minute speech.
Right.
So
Yeah.
are you taking classes? I don't think I need that. I'm just gonna go up there and flow. Really? You just gonna go up there and flow. Like, you want to go in front of people and you want to make them. You want them to pay you $10,000 to go up the top of your head. Oh, okay. This is the family cookout now. Got it. So, like,
So I figure you're not Jay-Z.
no, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, they could go up there and go off the top. They could do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Because they've proven that they can do. It's the mindset and explaining to them, explaining to clients that, listen, sometimes you got to do the work to get to that point so that you can get to that level. And it's like, it's just, we build ourselves up in our heads. And I'm not a coach by any means. I'm not going to give you the frilly affirmations, and I'm not going to bother you all the time. And let's get up and sunshine, and no. I'm not that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what people need, because I think so many times people have a misconception. I say a lot of times of business and entrepreneurship. And as we kind of even referenced before, like even talking about your experience that you had, just seeing the finish line, not seeing the work that you put in, or seeing, as I talked about Jay-Z, not seeing the amount of times he was probably writing and doing all those things to get to where he is or where he has been. We sometimes zoom past that, and we forget kind of like those work and that foundation. So I love that you help so many businesses and organizations do that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, or what's something that makes you more effective and efficient.
I have a notebook. This notebook is not a client notebook. It's talking, like, points that that I reference back to, and I have post-it notes that I use in the notebook that make me remember, like, this is, when I have this problem, go back to this. And it helps me to keep, in a way, it helps me to remember certain things. Like, even though I have 10 clients, but every single client has that one thing that it never fails. It's that one thing. So I write down what usually precedes it and how I handle it. So I'm not racking my brain, So there's always that one thing. And I'm very regimented in documenting those processes for myself, because it's like, the reason why I launched my podcast was because I don't like repetitively speaking things and saying the same things over. So that's what my hack is, find that common thread, a common issue that most of your clients have, write it down and keep that as your cheat sheet. And that's been my my saving grace, because it's like, because sometimes you're in such disbelief that you're like, I don't know how to fix this, and then you're like, oh, remember when such and such had that problem, and you have it. So yeah, that's my CEO hack. Get you a notebook.
There you go. No, I love that. And you kind of get your business Bible, so to speak, your own personal business Bible. And
Yep.
it's kind of like the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun. And so many times, if we haven't experienced it and we can't go back to our journal, I'm sure there's a book or there's a podcast or there's YouTube video or something that can look at those things. And I think so many times we forget about that stuff. But I love kind of like the hack within the hack, which is documenting those things, because
Yep.
so many times we experience them, but we don't actually write them down. We don't say what we get from them or how to deal with that. And so many times we kind of, again, zoom past that. So I love that you do that. So now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice, could be around PR consulting, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
If I could, trust your gut. Always trust your gut. No matter what the trends are saying, no matter what popular pop culture is saying, trust your gut. 9 times out of 10, it's the best. It's going to be your best way, your best decision. Trust your gut, because your gut will never fail you. I've seen so many different things, like, oh, everybody is doing such and such. Oh, this trend says this, and it's like something in my back of, I was like, nope, that's not how it's gonna. And sure enough, I'm right, because it's like you said, there's nothing new under the sun. Just trust your gut, because you've seen it all before. It just may be in a different package.
Yeah. No, that's extremely powerful. And I think too, like, as we kind of, been talking about, like when you have that experience, especially too, when you have been, running businesses and being around businesses, reading about businesses, doing so many things, a lot of times you might see the pattern. You may not know exactly what it is, but that's your gut sometimes saying, like, this is what's going to happen because we've seen this before. We read about it. We experienced it with this client. So now you start to see the same thing, and you have to be able to trust that, because sometimes, outward or external factors can sometimes influence you to do what you already know what you already know isn't the right answer inside.
Correct. And I tell people all the time, like, well, they said, well, this is trending on Twitter. Okay, cool. It doesn't matter. Like, oh, such and such, this influencer is doing something. Okay.
Yeah.
Stay on your path, and trust me, your path is gonna be fruitful for you. Just trust yourself. And sometimes you believe in somebody's business more than they do at times, and you know what's gonna happen. You could tell. And if they trust you, if you've proven yourself, it'll work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I often say, if you run your own race, you can never lose. We're so busy running everybody else's race. Sometimes that's when and how we start to lose. And so now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Chandra, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Being fearless, because to actually be a leader, you have to put your fear to the side sometimes, and trust your mindset, trust what you actually are putting together, because you as a leader, sometimes you're unsure of yourself, but you have to use that kind of that pit of your stomach, like that nervousness. You have to use that to fuel yourself, to make sure you stay on top of what you're doing. So that is the biggest thing. It's a position that not a lot of people can sit in, because they don't, everybody wants to call themselves a CEO, but it's more of a feeling and a lifestyle, because it's like you're a leader, or you're an example for people to follow. So it's a huge position. You can name yourself that all day, but if you don't walk it and speak it and stay true to it, then it doesn't mean anything. It's just a title.
Absolutely. No, I love how you said you spoke to it as a lifestyle and that fearlessness aspect, because I think so many times those leaders and us as leaders, we have that fear, but sometimes you have to feel that fear and do it anyways. And I think when we're talking about trusting your gut, if everybody is going right and you feel in your gut you need to go left, that's where that fearlessness needs to come in, and you need to trust yourself and be able to do that. And so many times that's what we see in so many different aspects of history and in the world. So Truly appreciate that definition. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Thank you for having me. I can be found on all things social media, Chandra Gore Consulting or under Chandra Gore 01, and also Conversations with Chan. I write about different entrepreneurs. I interview different entrepreneurs on a publication. So you can find out a lot by asking the right questions. So that's how you can stay in contact with me.
Awesome. Well, Chandra, we will definitely have the links and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can follow up with you. But I appreciate you again, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you.